Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Alternative rock band Vertical Horizon plays Wolf Trap next week on August 19th. I spoke with frontman Matt Scannell about forming the band with Keith Kane at Georgetown University, and their rise to stardom with hits like Everything You Want and You're a God.
Matt Scannell from Vertical Horizon. Hello, Jason. How are you?
Hey, thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, my pleasure. Absolutely. It's going to be nice to be back in the old stomping grounds. I went to school at Georgetown, so it's always fun to come back to that area.
We can get to that in a second, but I like to go chronologically if we can. So remind us where you grew up before you came down to DC. You know, you came to Georgetown for college, but you grew up in New England, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Worcester, Massachusetts, in the middle of the state. And went to school. I went to high school out there in Western Massachusetts, and eventually made my way down to Georgetown, and then have been playing music ever since.
Now, what did you study? Anything music related to Georgetown, or were you on a different path before you met Keith Kane?
Yeah, so I was actually sort of prepping for Plan B, to be honest with you. I was majoring in psychology, and I had a minor in English. I studied some music history at school, but it wasn't like I was studying to be a performer per se academically. And I kind of, both Keith and I kind of gave ourselves a year after we graduated to give the music thing a try. And we were frankly expecting for it to fail miserably. And then we would go on to Plan B. But that never happened, fortunately. And now, so many years later, I'm still doing it.
So when you're at Georgetown, do you remember the day you and Keith met? I know sometimes it's like a blur and you can't remember when you actually met people.
Oh, yeah, no, I remember specifically. Yeah, we were at a party, and then there was a sort of circle of people that just sort of gathered around who knew how to play guitar. And someone had a guitar. I think it may have been Keith's guitar, actually. And people were just sort of passing it around and playing a song. And Keith played a song, and I just absolutely loved his voice and, the spirit with which he played. And then, the guitar sort of made its way around the circle, and I played. I'm a huge Michael Hedges fan, and for people who don't know who Michael Hedges is, he unfortunately has passed away, but he sort of reinvented the acoustic guitar, sort of what is possible with the acoustic guitar. So there are a few records. One's called Live from the Double Planet that I would really, really highly recommend. There's many others, Watching My Life Go By and Breakfast in the Field, but he does on that live record. He does a version of All Along the Watchtower. By Bob Dylan, and so I retuned the guitar and played my version of Michael's version of All Along the Watchtower, and it was really fun. And right after that, Keith said, "Hey, do you want to jam sometime?" And Keith had a weekly gig at a bar in Georgetown, so I sat in with him, and we just had a lot of fun, and we were kind of off to the races.
Do you remember what the bar in Georgetown was?
I should. It was, no, I don't right now, unfortunately.
Right. Well, do you remember what spots, maybe locally that you might have played in once you formed the band,
Yeah. Well, we played at the Bayou quite a bit. We played at the Tombs with some regularity, actually in Georgetown. There was a barbecue place on the hill called Heads, and we would do a weekly gig there, and it was very kind of them. We, at that time, of course, we were really making no money whatsoever. So they would always feed us basically everything we could sort of eat and carry home with us that night. So Heads basically fed us throughout that time. We played all over the place. And DC, one of the things that was amazing about DC, of course, is that this was in a pre-internet time, and tape trading was kind of the thing. And there were so many students who would be coming in for a summer internship and then heading back to college in the fall. And we would be playing shows throughout the area during the summer months. And so people would hear us and make recordings of us and then bring those tapes with them back to college, wherever they were, in Seattle, St. Louis, etc. So we had this very organic thing where people would make copies of those tapes, and all of a sudden we'd get a call from a fraternity or sorority or a venue in St. Louis and say, "Hey, we'd love to have you come and play." And it was a direct it was directly in relation to the fact that there were so many summer interns in the DC area. It was really great.
Wow. Old school marketing, baby. Take
Very,
trading with
very.
summer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yep.
Real quick, I want to get into, the rest of the music, but real fast, one final piece on Georgetown, two final pieces on Georgetown. Did you guys ever climb those exorcist steps?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Those are not for the faint-hearted, for sure.
It's steep, man.
That's a real deal. Yeah,
totally.
And doing it in the middle of the night adds a sort of terror component as well. So
for sure. And I think you mentioned when you mentioned the tombs, I thought of that because I believe it's right up there by the house up there.
Yeah, it is. It's right around the corner. Yeah.
But and then what was Georgetown Hoyas basketball? I mean, the '80s were the huge John Thompson, Patrick Ewing, and then Allen Iverson. Like, if you're there, like late '80s, early '90s, I mean, was that just a crazy Hoyas fever?
Yeah, it was incredible. It was a lot of fun to watch them play and very often watch them win. It was kind of a drag because we didn't very often get to go see games on campus. They were, I think they were out, I don't know, whatever the Enormo Dome basketball stadium was. So it wasn't as easy to just, walk around on campus. Like my brother went to Duke. And so the Duke team would play on campus in this really small and kind of amazingly old school, basketball arena place. So we didn't see them at least I didn't see them in person quite as much as I saw them on TV, but you'd see them walking around, and these are incredibly talented athletes, and I had a lot of respect for what they could do. Sure.
For sure. All right. Well, then, so after the Georgetown days, you got, you formed the band, you've been doing the tape trading. So a bunch of college students know you, but the two of you guys, you relocate up to Boston, back sort of near where you grew up, back up in Massachusetts. But didn't you put together a debut album, There and Back Again? How much of a learning experience was that? Because I know that wasn't like a major label release. We'll get to that in a sec. But like, did any lumps you took for that, or surprisingly, you look back at it fondly, or tell me about that first one?
Well, yeah, I mean, the good news is I look back at it fondly, in as much as I can look back at, say, like an old photograph of myself in high school, with the questionable hairstyle and questionable teeth and maybe some acne. It's the same kind of thing where you're like, oh, isn't that sweet? But we learned how to use a recording studio making that record, and it was a real learning process for us. And it made a huge difference for us, and with our future, to be able to continue to be engineers and producers of our own music. And that was a really great experience. But on There and Back Again, you hear us literally learning how to use a recording studio.
The Big Kahuna, we all know, Everything You Want, that came out in '99. That was like your major label debut. But how did you guys actually officially get signed for that?
Well, it was an interesting thing because a lot of the major labels were passing on us, even though we had sold quite a few records independently, and we were trying to get to that next level. Of course, at the time, it was crucial for bands to get to a major label, for them to get that kind of reach that they, that system, as sort of slightly old school now as it is. But at the time, it was really a necessary step if you wanted to raise your profile. And so what we wound up doing, we were frustrated that we weren't getting sort of naturally just welcomed into the fold of the major label system. And so we made a live record down in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, at a place called Ziggy's. We recorded over 2 nights, and the record was called Live Stages. And the Live Stages record begins with about a minute of just, voracious applause from the audience. And we did that purposely. Once we made that record, we sent it off to all the A&R people who had passed on us, and at around the same time, I believe we had crossed the 70,000 units sales mark in the SoundScan network, and so those two things kind of perked up people's ears, literally. They were I could almost imagine them listening to that Live Stages record and going, how are they doing this without us? And that's when a couple of the labels really came to the table, and then ultimately sort of started kind of fighting over us, and we decided to go with RCA. And then out of that relationship came the Everything You Want record, which clearly changed our lives, and my life certainly forever.
Changed all of ours, man. It's like the soundtrack to my life and a lot of people's as well. So
that's nice of you, Jason.
Let's go into some of the songs. Everything You Want. I always thought it was kind of cool how it's sort of like third person, he's everything you want, and then by the end it's I am everything you want. How'd you come up with that?
Yeah, well, I wrote it. It's a song that was sort of written out of sheer frustration. I was in love with someone who sort of just thought of me as a friend, and it's a very classic story where that I just kept seeing her turn to people who were bad for her, people who treated her unkindly and without much respect, and then she'd sort of come back and cry on my shoulder, and of course I just wanted her to be better and to feel better, and I felt like I could be the man who could do that for her, but she just didn't see it that way. And so when I wrote that song, it was the third person choruses all sort of refer to her choices, the people that she's been with who ultimately didn't work out for her, and then the last chorus changes to first person out of that sheer frustration. And I always loved that shift. I think that on some levels that is the thing about that song that sort of makes it click and really resonate with so many people, and I'm just thrilled with that. It's such an honor and a privilege.
Oh yeah, well, it was a really cool way to write that one. So props. But and then of course the album also had "You're a God." I feel like I should pause after saying "You're a." I need to say it properly. It felt weird to say it fast.
That's hilarious. Yeah. The correct title of the song is "You're a God." That's correct.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, take me into the creation of "You're a God."
Well, so that one, very oftentimes people have asked me over the years if that song has anything to do with religion, and I sometimes get a little bit frustrated because it's really just a metaphor. It's it has nothing whatsoever to do with religion. I had put someone in my life in a position of power. I had given them the ability to sort of make decisions for me or influence my ability to make decisions in a way that they didn't deserve. And I was really frustrated with myself for enabling this dynamic. And I didn't really know how to get out of it, but then it was this moment of clarity where I sort of realized, well, if I gave them the power, I could just as easily just take it away. And so that's what I did. I wrote that song, and that was the sort of de facto line in the sand for me with that relationship. And it never, once that song was in my life, that dynamic changed forever and completely. And it was really nice. I think sometimes, I view songs I write songs very often as a means to make myself feel better. It's a very selfish pursuit, honestly. It's a pure pursuit. I'm not trying to do something that will make someone else necessarily feel a certain way. I generally just want to write about my own feelings and try to make myself feel better. And You're a God is a perfect example of that. I turn to music to try to make my life better and make myself, lift myself up and not be at the mercy of someone who didn't deserve the role that I had given them. And so, that's where You're a God came from.
Never again is what you're saying.
Nice. Yes, that's exactly right.
Exactly. Well, thanks for explaining that. And I know, it has nothing to actually do with religion. But, every time they do a Bruce Almighty, that royalty check's got to be pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, man. That was so cool. What a great experience that was. I remember going to the theater and just hearing it, and the song just keeps playing. It keeps going and going and going. I remember thinking, wow, this is the longest musical cue in the movie. I'm not sure that it is, but for me, it was just a thrill, an absolute thrill. It was fun.
Yeah, you're tied to Jim Carrey forever.
I love it.
Well, and I also have to ask you, gosh, we could go forever about this one album, but Best I Ever Had, man, that is just it's a heart tugger. Tell me the creation of that one.
Well, that one was tough. I think sometimes relationships can be like these beautiful supernovas that kind of flash into existence and then almost just as quickly fade away. And I think there are times when you're in one of those relationships and having those experiences where you almost know, like, this is too good to last. This is not going to be something that we can hold on to for whatever reason. And that's exactly what happened to me and the woman for whom I wrote Best I Ever Had. We just sort of held on to it for as long as we could do so. And then it just kind of faded away, and she went on her path and I kind of went on mine. But I realized I needed to kind of immortalize her the way I saw her, and she's pretty spectacular. So that's where Best I Ever Had came from.
Yeah, and it was a really good. I thought Gary Allan crushed it for the country cover of it too, right from the beginning of the, so you sailed away. I'm like, oh, he's gonna crush this.
Yeah, he did a fantastic job, and of course his covering of that song was a very, very bittersweet thing with the passing of his wife. So I was truly honored to have been to have written the vessel for, with which he could sort of serve to do some of his mourning for his wife. It's amazing to me that songs can mean one thing at a certain time to one person and then something completely different to someone else in another set of circumstances. And that's one of the reasons that music is so powerful. It's so beautiful, and it doesn't come with an instruction manual or a decoder ring. It's what it is what it means to you, and that's just as valid as what it means to me. And there's a real beauty there, and that experience for me with Gary just really underscored that whole side of the beauty of music.
Well, you can come see the beauty of music at Wolf Trap on
Nice.
Thursday, August 19th, Vertical Horizon, sharing a bill with Train. So two big bands we all know and love, again on the 19th. Hey, thanks so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate it. I've admired your music for a while, and it's really cool getting to catch up with you, Matt.
Oh, Jason, thanks for taking the time, and thanks for asking, meaningful and insightful questions. And thank you for following along and on the journey of the band. It means a lot to me that our music has meant something to you. Thank you.
All right, now go take care of the dog.
Okay. Yeah. See you, buddy.
All right, later, man.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.